For centuries, knowledge has been hidden in plain sight across the sands of time. Whispers of lost civilizations, cryptic symbols, and forbidden histories have been erased or concealed. What if the truth was never lost, but hidden? Welcome to Eye of Ancient Mysteries, where the past speaks and the future listens. Sit back, open your mind, and prepare to uncover the untold secrets of our world. Let the journey begin now. 11 Likes or Death, Chronology and Epicrisis of the Epidemic of the year 2152. This morning He woke up with the thought that today was the last permissible day. The last day when he absolutely had to post something. There was an unwritten but clear and strict rule, a specific period during which you can remain silent, but after that you must post. Otherwise you cease to exist, disappear from the world's sight, drop out of existence because you don't maintain life. Your life, in the only place where it is conducted, the network, falls apart. 1 week. 1 week was the allowable absence from life. He did not know if this was always the case, but from his conscious memories it was a fact. He had found archival documents indicating that about 100 years ago, this network and form of life did not exist, but they seemed more like fiction than reality. How could what was written there be true? It wasn't even explicitly stated, but it became clear somehow. It said that in 2129, the Internet reached every corner of the world. Doesn't that mean, for God's sake, that before that it was not everywhere? It said that from that moment on, there was no place left unattended or not given the unique opportunity to connect to the virtual informational world. So there was such a place before. The average intelligent mind, which He considered himself, would concluded. In that document there was also information about the year 2138, connected with the final transfer of all life into the network. Where else? He wondered. Had it been until then? Apparently. Maybe somewhere else. There was no data or information about any preceding network, so this remained a dark spot of unknown information. Maybe there had been another system that collapsed at some point and forced the redirection and transfer to this one. It was unclear if he even accepted there was any truth in those documents. But it was noted there that in 2138 the entire life officially moves and operates in the network. People communicate there. Where else, really? Educate and learn there, as if there is another possible way. Work there, eat there of course. As naturally expected, the network delivers food to all its users, so they do not have to get up, work, or interrupt their social activities. So if it wasn't always like this, then someone else must have delivered food before, He mused. And, of course, status, ratings, and likes on the wall, the highest goal in life. He could not imagine what it was like before that, what people lived for, what they wanted to achieve, what they aimed for. Small, insignificant souls with mediocre, limited, petty mouse, like goals again, if what was written was even true. What rating for your life did you have then, He asked himself, if not the likes on your wall? If not likes, it was probably easier, much easier than now. with some other kinds of ratings. Now everyone was satisfied, had seen everything from the sweetest photos and drawings of cats and dogs through incredible beauties of every corner of the planet, filmed and provided to them by the network, to scenes of unimaginable cruelty. They had reacted to everything, and hardly anything could catch their eye and interest enough to like it. And this, it seemed, somehow marked the beginning of the epidemic, which gave him a vague idea that maybe before it really wasn't like that. Actually, the only thought that gave him some proof that everything described in those documents was true was that they also contained a fragment of information about the start of the epidemic, and that was something he himself also remembered. The plague that appeared around the year 2252, in which if what you post isn't liked by at least 11 people, and you don't get at least 11 likes, your being turns out to be useless and meaningless for the current world, unnecessary and unwanted, and your body automatically begins to self-destruct. This plague began to decimate all humanity everywhere on Earth. "Oh, what are 11 likes?" the ancient inhabitants of the planet would say. According to the archives, where 11 likes were nothing, they gathered 50, even 100, or more than 100. Those were good times, but not in 52. The over-satisfied, over-informed society of 52 likes nothing. For the most accurate chronology and Epicrisis, the data shows the epidemic began sometime in late spring of 2052, which exactly was the first region, the first city, or the first home affected is unclear, because it spread so fast and mercilessly that in no time the number of victims became extremely large, so large that it's hard to say who was first. But what the hell did it matter who was first? This morning He really woke up thinking today was the last permissible day. The last day he absolutely had to post something. He sat thoughtfully in front of his computer. He had one day to figure out what to post. 24 hours. 24 hours for 11 likes. Minimum, of course, but who nowadays hopes for more? But what should it be? Information. Thousands of tons of information flooded the network. Everything had already been read. All kinds of sensations, surprises, discoveries had been written. Nothing could surprise, shock, delight, sadden, anger, or excite people already saturated with everything. A photo. Everything in the world had already been photographed in all positions, shades, filters, variations, moods, combinations. A song. Everything had been listened to dozens of times. A movie. Everything possible had already been filmed and watched. Everything was painfully cliché to document his thought. Food. Action. Going to the bathroom, cliché, cliché, cliché after cliché, everything painfully familiar to everyone, everything done over and over, worn out. At the end of the day, exhausted from thinking and worries, He sat heavily in his chair before the screen and sank into the modern dilemma, to post or not to post. But this was somehow tautology, as if in both cases the same awaited him. If he didn't post, it would be the 7th day with no activity. All his friends and acquaintances would assume he had died, that he no longer existed, would delete him from their contacts and HE would cease to exist. What if he posted? The chance he wouldn't get 11 likes was high, almost certain. The previous time his last post barely escaped the plague in its first 58 minutes, it got only 10 likes. 10 likes! Only 10 likes, he thought. He stared silently and intently at the post and wilted with every passing second, as if literally feeling the plague rubbing its hands with satisfaction around him, looking impatiently at the clock, waiting for its final countdown. How far I've come! I have 12, 456, 669, 574, 795, 659 friends and 10 likes. And at the last moment a man named Chun Habum Pen from somewhere very far, she didn't know exactly where, but it sounded distant, gave his like, and thus 11 likes were gathered. But since then, since his last post, a week had passed, a long week during which people became even more satisfied, and it was even harder to please them. Lost in thought, He suddenly snapped at the barely audible clicking of the clock. The day was over. Well, this at least largely clarifies things. He sighed and suddenly felt 10 kilograms lighter. The unbearable weight of the dilemma, the neurotic pondering about what to post, apparently all this weighed roughly exactly 10 kilograms. Give or take 100 grams, suddenly fell heavily off his shoulders and he felt light and apathetic. So that was it. Now all that remained was to wait for the first symptoms of the plague. He lay down on the bed. This great lightness took over him completely. The tension from the need for a new post was gone. The stress for his own significance and existence was gone. There was no point in them any more. After all, he was a traveler. He thought and began to guess the symptoms. What were they like? Did the body begin to slowly stiffen? Or did it simply cool down and freeze? Or did it heat up and evaporate? Or maybe liquefy? Or maybe a pulsating pain started in the head and spread through the body? Or organs began to fail one by one? While waiting for the first symptoms and guessing their type, suddenly a thought appeared in his heart. It nested there, sank into it, and slowly began to suck the life force from his heartbeat. No, he would not give in to this plague. No matter how strong, no matter how mighty, it would not get its hands on him. Why? Not because he was brave, fearless, or heroic. Simply because he would outpace it. How did people die long ago? Or at least how was it written, or how someone invented that they died? Suddenly he was overwhelmed with curiosity, a vivid curiosity he probably hadn't felt his whole life. After all, he too, like the others, already knew almost everything and had seen almost everything. This vivid curiosity flowed into his cells like adrenaline, and he felt more alive than ever. Strange he was going to die. And yet he felt? Or was this one of the plague's symptoms? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. He thought feverishly, I have to outpace it. And he excitedly searched through archival documents. So, before the plague, people died of old age. Okay. Obviously that wasn't an option for him if he was to find a way to outpace it. Something else, earthquakes and floods. Yes, that would be hard too. Then what? Then what? And suddenly before his eyes he found what he was looking for, priceless information that some people ended their own lives or the lives of others. But how, but how? He started reading, but how, but how? He started reading excitedly. And why? The thought slipped into his mind. As interesting as it was distracting at the moment, so he tossed it aside out of the spotlight and returned to the how. Very little practical information, damn it, and suddenly more details about the other thing, the why. How much interest there was in that past, damn it, if only he had time to study it instead of trying to outrun it. But here he was. His mind kept drifting there. Why? Because of great misery, sorrow, sadness, loneliness, mockery, love. Well, yeah, how else? He thought. If what's written is true, no internet, no network, no connection, what kind of life was that anyway? Lonely, isolated, but wait, love. Why that? Didn't they get enough love and approval from the previous networks and friends? Not enough likes. Maybe back then there was the same plague. A bit different. Caused by too few likes, meaning approval and love? Death? Could this not be the first occurrence of the plague? Could it be? At that moment, his computer screen made a strange sound. A sound He had never heard before. He stared at it, feverishly thinking if this was the first symptom of the plague. It made perfect sense, now that he thought about it, that it would come right through the computer and the network. Slowly, of course, slowly. Otherwise, where would the tension go? A message appeared on the screen. The message read, "Due to urgent measures taken by the Internet and the network to reduce the number of victims of the epidemic, you have been granted an additional 5 minutes to post a status update on your wall." Save your life! Post on your wall! His eyes widened in confusion and shock. Was this a joke? Another 5 minutes? What? How? At the same time, despite all the shock and tension, He knew exactly what he was going to post. Exactly what he had just discovered. Without thinking further, he wrote in big letters on his wall, "TISPLAGUIS now THEFIHEWORLD. THERAVBNOTRS beef. Oh, Galivis! He didn't know if this was true. He didn't know if these documents could even be trusted. He wanted to write more, something pathetic or encouraging or urging action, revolutionary, bold actions. Fråga vad vi kan IT. Lydias findo wadiwa dealtrids IT BFR. And these smice IT again steal or wells. But He knew that most people get bored reading long posts, and that would discourage them, especially if it was more than one sentence, which drastically lowers the chances of a reaction. After all, no one likes something they haven't even read. So without further thought, He hit send. Suddenly, before he even blinked more than 10 times, before he realized what had just happened, before the tension relaxed his body, before he shook off, at least for a while, the thought of outrunning the plague, before he stopped worrying about what he read about the before. So after all, even if it wasn't true, it was good fiction. One couldn't deny that. And He was a connoisseur of such things. Before all that, He heard the first sound, a sound he recognized very clearly, the sound of a like, and before he realized it, he heard the next one, and another, exactly 10. He thought, and at that moment heard the 11th sound. 11. 11 likes. 11. He barely processed this thought himself. What does this mean? He thought joy and relief, excitement and happiness. The thought that he succeeded would flood his mind, but instead tension slowly settled back in, along with the thought. So one more week. Maybe it was better to die. Anyway, the only moment he ever felt alive, the moment he felt most alive, was when he realized he was going to die.